Clair-Obscur Expedition 33 is a game that won massive accolades in 2025 for breaking down a lot of barriers and being notably the game of the year. But alongside this has brought a bunch of controversy. One of them being, the fact that they were later exposed for using some Gen AI in their game development process that led to other controversies, like the Indie Game Awards stripping them of their Game of the Year nomination. That was something that happened. But we are not here to talk about the awards of Clair-Obscur Expedition 33, but another controversy that the game has fallen into, involving a comic creator. So this was a post written by Oliver Gay. I didn't know this, but this is what some commenters and some people on the internet were saying. But in France, it is common for people to fully capitalize the last name for clarity of namesake. Like what's in lowercase is your first name and what is in capitals is your last name. So I didn't know that. I just thought that was interesting. But Oliver writes, I just received a lawyer's letter from the game Clair-Obscur Expedition 33 by Sandfall Interactive, which Sandfall Interactive is the developer, which orders me to stop selling my comic published by Dracu titled Academy Clair-Obscur, supposedly writing on the game's undeniable success. Oliver continues, for info, this is a project that was pitched to Dracu in 2019, and for which I have a contract under that name since March 2024, well before the game's release. So we're in full agreement that it has nothing to do with any intent to write on anything. It's just an unpleasant coincidence. Too bad. If I released the comic February 2025, I could have been the one asking them to change it. Moreover, the comic has nothing to do with the story either. It's about a peasant who joins an elite magic school, and the Clair-Obscur refer to a specific magic technique. Be it as it may, I neither have the energy nor the money to engage in a legal battle, especially against French studios that I greatly appreciate, because that is what's most frustrating about it. I did in fact play Clair-Obscur Expedition 33. I platinumed the game and beat Simon with full parries. I recommended it on social media, and I have boundless admiration for Sandfall's interactive success story. So there you have it. It's all the more disappointing to see them going to court without any reason. The comic will continue under another name, and I hope it keeps finding success. In any case, I'm counting on you because I'm not gonna hide that it's left me feeling a bit down. That absolutely sucks, and I feel so bad for all of you. Like, you have this great idea, you came up with a name for the idea, and by all intents and purposes, possibly, right? Maybe you got to it first, potentially, in 2019. There's many times where something is invented in multiple places in the world at the same time, right? This is maybe one of those things where, like, both of you guys came up with a piece of entertainment media, maybe around a similar window, and coincidentally just named it the same thing. But because one has the backing of, like, a full studio, so they do have the finances for that. Also, a commenter asked for clarification as to who specifically sent the email, and Olivier adds, according to the email, it's from Sandfall Interactive. Does that change anything? Another user says, almost certainly a law firm specializing in intellectual property hired by Sandfall or the publisher to hunt down this kind of thing, but they're overzealous in trying to justify their outrageous fees. If you contact Sandfall, they're sure to tell them to stop. And Olivier says, yes, we're gonna test that, thank you. Another person adds, is it possible to simply change the name? Would that require rewriting the whole story? Olivier adds, well, it's the name of the academy and some kind of magic I use in it. I could maybe change it in the future, but they want from my editor to take back all comics currently in store, which is a huge problem. Another user says, I went to your publisher's website and I think what prompted this email is the release date of your comic book on January 7th, 2026. They could legitimately have thought that you were indeed capitalizing on the game's success, since it came out after all the rewards were received. Try reaching out to them. And Olivier adds, yep, I can understand. But in that case, an email or a call would be enough to clear up the misunderstanding, rather than a 10-page registered letter demanding the withdrawal of all copies from sale. Another person adds again, like, who did they get the letter from? And Olivier adds, a large intellectual property firm. I don't know if I have the right to cite them, but indeed, they might have been mandated to intervene without Sandfall being aware of it. Another person states that Olivier should start a GoFundMe, and Olivier adds that they appreciate the thought, but they want to stand on their own 2 feet, and they don't want to ask internet people to help them on a fight. Another person adds, honestly, they're right. The title is extremely close, the black outline inside the letters, so you see like the lines there. If I happen to walk by your comic in a store, I do get the impression of dealing with a product derived from the game. And Olivier says, yeah, sure, but I had nothing to do with it. The title predates their game. And also to add, like, the idea of Clair-Obscur, it is based off of an art technique that involves painting with high contrast between light and dark. The word in French, from my understanding in French, it literally is the direct translation of clair and obscure, which is like, clear to see and obscure. And there is also an Italian term, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce this right, referencing the same thing. It's not like this is like a hyper specific term that the game invented themselves. It was not like a word that didn't exist before. This is a word that has existed for a very long time, in fact, where, according to Wikipedia, highlights that the Italian-based word existed during the Renaissance period. So long, long ago. Other people are saying, well, Sandfall registered the IP as a trademark before the comic released. So unfortunately, even if OP had the idea prior and pitched it to Draku, if they didn't register the IP, there's not much you can do. And if you check the trademark information, Clair-Obscur was trademarked by Sandfall Interactive November 18th, 2024, under the category of Education and Entertainment Services. So it is trademarked, and not a lawyer or attorney, so don't take what I say as legal advice, but this could maybe break down into a couple of points, right? Either one, Sandfall is maliciously attacking anybody who remotely uses the Clair-Obscur terminology in any sort of naming of media and interpreting it as you're just riding off of our success. It could too be like what commenters are saying, an overzealous firm basically going after anybody and everyone who has ever used Clair-Obscur, with Sandfall not really knowing, right? Sandfall kind of being like, oh, just make sure people aren't using a copyright, and they're just going guns blazing. There's also like another third option, possibly, that there is a precedent for this. This was involving Patagonia with a drag queen by the name of Patagonia. Very, very similar name. Patagonia, they do a lot of activist work. I think she was the one who was like walking across the country to raise money, to raise like $1 million. I believe that's what they were doing. But they're an activist, etc. But their branding is very heavily, obviously, based off Patagonia, like without fail. And according to this Inc.com article, a bit tricky because Patagonia actually sued the drag queen Patty. And it says, quote, while we wish we didn't have to do this and actively engaged with Patty for several years to avoid this, it has become necessary to protect the brand we spent the last 50 years building. Where essentially they sued Patagonia for $1. Because the thing is, when you have a trademark, you have to defend your trademark. And if you don't defend your trademark, you can lose it. So essentially, what it kind of boiled down to, or what it seemed to at least boil down to, is that it was like, hey, we like what you're doing, but you are using our brand name and you're selling merch now with our brand name, like with a brand name that's very similar, with a logo that looks really, 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 really similar to our logo. I know you're making a play on it, but to protect our trademark, we do have to sue you for like $1. And the article literally says that. On one hand, this is pretty simple. Patagonia is obligated to protect its trademark or risk losing them altogether. Trademark law doesn't allow companies to enforce their rights selectively. So Patagonia put it bluntly, to maintain our own rights, we must prevent others from copying our brands and logos. And if we don't, we risk losing the ability to defend our trademarks entirely. Patagonia basically highlights, yeah, like if we don't, unfortunately, defend our trademark with Patagonia, oil and gas companies and stuff like that, other counterfeiters could go and use our logo because we would lose the rights to defend it. It's always kind of interesting. I'm curious about your thoughts on this and what you think possibly might have happened. Well, while I was in Vancouver, an update happened, so let's take a peep at this. On March 9th, Sandfall Interactive posted to their Twitter page writing, "Hello everyone. We've seen the discussions. Thank you for bringing the situation to our attention. We're in contact with the publisher and Olivier to find a fair solution for everyone." And then yesterday, Sandfall posted this update writing, "Hello to everybody. Sorry for dragging our feet in communicating on the subject. The situation initiated by the legal representatives of our studio was new to us and complex to manage." All right, so here we have a confirmation that it was a legal entity operating on their behalf. Sandfall continues, "We wanted to make sure we could discuss it with all the stakeholders to be certain we understood what was happening before sharing information with you. Sandfall was working to withdraw the request from our legal representative, which has now been done. Their role is to protect us in particular against counterfeit products, but the action initiated towards the comic book published January 2026 does not align with us. We have always wanted to support artists and encourage creativity, and that's one of the most important values we want to defend at Sandfall. We wish Olivier and Grenlin every success with their comic book." So that's a really big dub. Thankfully, it was a situation where there was a legal entity operating on their behalf, and it wasn't them going after a comic book writer. And I just thought this was very wholesome. This is posted where the commenter writes, "You two look so good together too. Thank you for letting our artists and authors work." And it's a side-by-side of Expedition 33 and the comic book, which is beautiful. I love this. So I'm really glad there was a positive resolution to all of this. And again, the comic book will be linked down below if you would like to go and check them out. And with that, if you like this video, I appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Don't forget to check me out on Etsy or Ko-fi, and I have a Twitch where I stream 3 days a week, Mondays and Saturdays at 6 p.m. or Thursdays at 7:30. So I hope to catch you all there or in another video. Peace.